We've been approached many times by players that ask us, how do I know if I'm making progress? How do I know where I'm at, where I should be going? What's the next step in my career? And it's very difficult. It's very difficult to really find this clarity in your career and what's next. And what do I do to become better? Should I be thinking of that or not? All right, David, great to be with you again. Excited to be recording the second podcast of World Cup Habits. I'm very excited. I'm actually wearing my new t-shirt for those that are seeing us, the Zero Excusas t-shirt. So now we're matching. You have the beast mode. What is it? A top?
It's the Nike tracksuit top.
Nice. I like it.
Big Smoke Soccer.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering when I'm going to get that T-shirt though.
Yes, we're making a couple specially for you.
I will wait until I get my new ones printed up and
we'll swap.
Yeah.
So today we were just discussing, okay, what's this podcast going to be today? And what we were talking about is that we've been approached many times by players that ask us, how do I know if I'm making progress? How do I know where I'm at, where I should be going? What's the next step in my career? And it's very difficult. It's very difficult to really find this clarity in your career and what's next. And what do I do to become better? Should I be thinking of that or not?
You know, Pepe, the interesting thing is, I think this has got two tones to it, right? It's got your side and my side. Right, of knowing where they are, knowing where they want to go. And I think the mental side here it's so hand in hand with the technical side. Because from our end, players don't realize either how good they are or it goes to the other spectrum of they're delusional.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So from my end, I'm going to talk about how we do this with players.
Yes.
You know, and the fantastic thing about being alive in 2020 is, first of all, we're alive in 2020. It hasn't got us yet.
Yeah.
And the second thing is like cell phones and all you need these days is a tripod and a cell phone.
Yeah.
And we'll get into what those two objects can do to turbocharge your future technical development.
I love that word. Yes, I agree with you. The model when I'm working with a player consists of 4 stages. And the first one is clarity, is really finding that clarity, because there's no reason why you should work on something if you don't know really where you stand. So the first thing is recognizing where you stand, where you're at. If you're going to build whatever it is, you know, if it's a big building, you have to know on top of what you're building in order to put together the plan. So the first thing is having the clarity of where you stand. And as we were discussing, we see that this goes 2 ways. One way where the player is delusional. You know, I was giving you this example that, in my opinion, 50% or more, this is just my stat, of Sunday League players, in the back of their heads, they're thinking, I'm just this close to being discovered. You know, I'm this close to playing for, you know, Barcelona, Real Madrid, Arsenal, whichever team, you know, America.
Okay. Are you saying that I'm not going to play for Arsenal? Sorry, mate, but I just don't think it will happen. Oh, maybe not.
But it does. I think we could all easily run into that. But it only doesn't happen with players in the league. I mean, it can happen to players in college. I mean, there's so many stages, and usually the mind makes us think that, oh, I'm just 1 or 2 steps. I'm not that far away. And that's not the case. That's not the case. I mean, I'm not saying it happens to everyone, but most of the times that's not the case. I mean, there's so many steps.
I feel like social doesn't help either, does it? Like social media.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many accounts that like I see with little kids and clearly like they're run by the parents.
Yeah.
And they're like future Barcelona star. And you're just like, is this Barcelona of Ecuador?
Yes.
Because we're not talking Barcelona.
And still, yes.
Yeah. And that's still a heavy level.
Yes. Yes.
Right? Like that's still a professional, very, very good level.
Yes.
So I feel like all of that doesn't help. Right? Planting that doesn't help, because then how do you know where you are, right?
Yeah.
So this is what I do with my players, is analyze, right? So to find out where you are, first of all, we've got a thing called an IDP, an individual development program. You can download it for free at beastsmokesoccer.com/IDP. And the first part is the analysis, and it's very first thing you do is there's 20 questions, and you rate yourself on, what you think you need to work on. But the whole point is that you've watched yourself on video, right? And it doesn't have to be professional video. It can be an iPhone that you put into iMovie or any other, video editing, and you cut out your clips. Or, I know a lot of clubs these days actually do it for you. And you watch your clips and you figure out, okay, I need to do this, I need to do that. And then you rate yourself 1 through 20. And then you take it to your teammates and your coaches, and you ask them to be brutally honest, because we're not allowed to be brutally honest anymore, right? You've got to sugarcoat everything.
True.
And you ask them to be brutally honest, and then you collate that data, and then you figure out what you want to work on. That is our stage one.
Yeah.
Right? And then you've got a bona fide list of things that you need to work on, and in order to get where you want to be. So that's our stage one.
Yeah. And you mentioned something that's very important, data. And because the advantage of working with data in anything is that it's cold, it's not emotional, and it really allows you to understand where you stand. It's a number, and then you say, okay, my number 4 or 5 now, I'm going to take it to a 6 or whatever that is. We do a very similar test or way of evaluating, where it's okay, within this pyramid of the soccer world, where do you stand? And it goes all the way down to, starting, development, academy, semi-pro, pro, and then pro is divided in so many different stages. And then you can really assess and say, okay, which level am I playing now? And then within that level, are you a starter? Do you play, some minutes? Do you come from off the bench or not? Are you just in the stands? So that really helps you understand where you stand, because when you have this clarity, then you can put together a plan to move to the next stage. And I think that this is where people, their heads usually, and it happens to all of us, it could work against us, because now we're not being honest. And thus, as you were saying, this other person that you met, that he said, I'm so close playing for Barcelona. You're like, struggling here playing with us. So this is very important. And it can hurt us. I understand it can hurt us. It can be very challenging and hard to accept. But that's part of life. And that's part of also being mentally tough, accepting that, and then working towards something, the next stage.
Yeah, it's like, the thing is, and again, like, where the way society is right now, you're not allowed to hurt anybody's feelings, right? And that's the great thing about data. Data will do it for you. So, if I've, and it's not necessarily negative as well, because what I find with my players, especially the ones who are at the top level, right, the ones who are at the top level, they don't have a clue what they've done wrong and what they've done well. So, I'll get a text. I've watched one player walk off that field And in my head, I've counted it down until I get a text and it's less than a minute. I was terrible today. And I've already written down, I'm like, why were you terrible? Well, I missed this chance. And I'm like, yeah, but in this minute, this minute, this minute, and this minute, you did this, 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 this. So you're focusing on that one error when everything that you did positively for the team today vastly outweighs that.
Yes.
Vastly outweighs it. And that's data.
Yeah.
Right? Or they say, oh, I've done really well today. I'm like, actually, your passing percentage was 60%.
Yeah.
Just because you had to pass the ball 500 times and you're on the ball a lot doesn't necessarily mean it was good. So we need to work on sharpening up those passes and the decision.
Yes.
And again, the data does not lie.
Yeah, true.
And
do you focus with players when you're working on that specifically on, let's say, their position? So when part of what we do with 6 p.m. Sports, which is the agency that we have, and we help teams with the scouting, is that there's so many systems that can tell you he made so many passes and everything. But many times, let's say a midfielder, most of the passes are going backwards instead of forward. So the stats could say, look, he has a great accuracy. He touches the ball or she touches the ball a lot, but all the passes are going back again. Yeah. And coaches are like, no, I don't want that. So how do you evaluate that with your players?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, again, like not mentioning names, but I have one player whose stat percentage is always above 90%. But it was a lot of back passing.
Yeah.
Right. And again, showing them the data, and it's like with footage, but like, listen, here, if you just checked, you could have turned and made a penetrating pass there.
Yeah.
So I tend to focus on impact passes.
Yes.
Now, an impact pass isn't necessarily an assist, but an impact pass is getting it out of danger when an easy option would have just been to dump it back. But you've checked your shoulder, you've seen a little bit of space, and then you've made a pass, say, out to your left winger, who may have done nothing with it, but it was still an impact pass. So we do look at all of that, and that's the thing about Huddle and Instat and all of this, right? We use Instat, it's great, is that it's just passing percentages. Yeah. So you've got to watch the passes.
Yeah.
And Instat, you can get all the arrows, which is fantastic.
And as we were saying, this gives you the clarity of understanding where you are. And one of the examples we're giving is the delusional one, where you're not being realistic of really where you stand. But it can go the other way around. And I've noticed this, and it happens a lot with pro players that have played at the highest levels, that are recognized by everyone, national teams, World Cups, played in Europe, and that you notice that they suffer a lot from imposter syndrome. And the idea of imposter syndrome is this thought that comes and says, you're not that good. One day they'll realize you're not that good. And it happens in many fields.
Yeah.
Not only in soccer or in sports. It happens to artists, all sorts of, and in different industries. But this imposter syndrome is the one that's saying, no, you were lucky. You were lucky. They'll find out you're not that good. And then it doesn't allow you to perform and doesn't allow you to improve.
Right. Well, I suffer from that.
Yeah, I was going to ask, do you know someone?
Yeah,
I also suffer from that. Yeah.
I get a lot of compliments from people. I also get a lot of shade. Right? And it's one of those things where just recently, February, it hit me because I've always had it. Right? With my players have won the World Cup, they've won Olympic gold medals, they've won the Champions League.
Amazing.
And I still think, just luck that I've landed here. And then I was working with a player down in Florida, and one of the youth national teams were there. And I know the coach, and we were chatting, and they're like, "Oh, do you mind if I watch the session?" I'm like, "No, of course." And at the end, she's like, "Dave, that was like really, really good. That session was like exactly what that player needed." And I looked at her and went, "You could have done it." And she looked, she went, "No, I couldn't." And I was like, "What?" She's like, "You don't get it, do you?" She's like, "What makes you you is that your superpower is knowing exactly how to create drills to work on that player, what they need to work on."
Mm.
And I looked and I'm like, she actually really rates what I do.
Mm.
And, since then I've been better with it because I'm like, well, this is one of the best coaches I know.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when people meet me, they're like, "Hey, I love what you do." I get embarrassed. I'm like,
Yeah.
and then the next morning I'll be working with Mallory Pugh. And I don't know. It's a weird one.
Yes. Yeah. And that's why data helps you there. And an exercise that I do with players is called the reality exercise. And the reality exercise is what I think and what the reality is. So what I think is all these thoughts that I have of imposter syndrome, they'll find out. What the reality is that the championships I've won, numbers, all of these things. And when you show them that, where they've played, what they've achieved, that doesn't mean that they don't want to win more, but the reality is that. And then it allows you to build from there and to recognize your achievements. And I found that that's a very good exercise when you do the reality exercise. My thoughts and what the reality is.
Yeah. Do you find, because I find this with a lot of players, especially in training, and it's kind of that similar thing. They're so heavy on themselves when they make a mistake in training, yet they'll do something absolutely world class,
Yeah.
not even recognize it.
Yeah. It's normal.
And I'll stop them, and I'm like, right there. I'm like, what? I'm like, pat yourself on the back then.
Yeah.
What do you mean? I'm like, 3 misses, you've literally berated yourself.
Yes.
But you do something that no one else on the planet can do.
Yeah.
And it's next.
Yes.
Like, got to be, because I tell players all the time, like,
Yeah.
we live in a society that's fueled with hate, and you've got to be your own biggest cheerleader. Like, you have to be, because as soon as you get very good at something, people are going to try and knock you down.
Yes.
People are going to talk smack on you. Why would you be one of those people talking smack on yourself?
But that's why I think that it's important to recognize your tendency as to where it's going. And it's not easy. And I believe that's why it's important to have a coach, a mentor, somebody that's guiding you here and saying, okay, am I going towards the delusional side, or am I going towards the imposter side where I'm not that good? And then going from there, because if not, it could happen that you're having this way of thinking where you're delusional, and now you think, oh, it's everyone against me, and it's, well, no, mate, you're not that good. You're not putting in that work. You're not doing all those things, those sets and reps that are needed. So I think that's important. That's why having somebody that can guide you and tell you things.
Pepe, when it comes to mentorship, hello.
Yeah, this is Henry.
Hey, Henry.
Henry, just
Henry, habla español o inglés?
Henry, what do you want to say? Yeah, he wants a hug.
But I feel like when it comes to like mentorship and a guide, one thing that you need from that guide is, are they being honest, or are they telling you what you want to hear?
Yeah.
Because when I have a player come to me and they're like, yeah, I want to play at UNC or UCLA or USC, and I'm like, okay, you're 15, that's pretty late. Not playing on a great team.
And that's hard.
Oh, yeah. And I watch the footage and I'm like, you can get there.
Yeah.
Probably as a walk-on.
Yeah.
This is what you're going to need to do.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh,
yeah.
no, I don't believe you.
Yes.
I think I can do it anyway. And you're like, oh, you can, but you're going to have to put this amount of work in. And then, you know, you get the opposite ones. I have a group in the mornings. I call them Team Excellence, because we do 6:15 a.m. start. And there we've got kids who are going to USC, there's UCLA, there's Duke, one's undecided yet, two are undecided yet, but they're going to like big schools. And then people are like, yeah, but how did they get an offer?
Yeah.
Because every day for the past 3 months and for the years before I've been working with them, they sacrifice the lay-in.
Yeah.
They wake up, they go to bed early, they wake up and they train, and there's a plan for them.
Yes.
And that's what they do. And it's, again, it comes back to what people don't see, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And that's what I find with, you know, the people who think they can play for Barcelona, is they don't see the work
Yes.
that these players are putting in. And that's right up to the professional level as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Right, like, you know, with Alex, like when Alex comes back and she's going to bang goals, and people are just going to be like, oh, she's just so naturally gifted.
Yeah.
And what they're not going to see is, you know, Alex, first of all, like hitting it hard after having Charlie, and then I'm going out to Florida to work with her, and then Johnny from Beast Mode Soccer is like working with her all the time until she gets back to Orlando. They don't see that. That's not the cool side of being a good footballer, is it?
Yes, no.
Like, nobody actually wants to see the grind, because then it'll make you feel guilty. If I want it, it's like me saying, I want to win the lottery. I ain't buying a ticket, though.
Yeah. And I think that we like to see it in videos. We like to see it if a year is condensed in 2 minutes. You know, if you're watching a movie, they show you the preseason and they show you 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But really living it is very different. And I think that's one of the challenges, speaking about understanding the whole situation and the clarity. But then I also believe that the next step is, where are you going? And it's very easy. I mean, it's very easy. World Cup, National League, Champions League, playing in Europe, whatever it is. Everybody could say that. But you rarely hear somebody say what the next step is, okay, for them. And that's where I believe that the biggest mistake happens, because if you really want to build momentum in your career, you have to be clear of where you stand and what's that next step, and be very clear. And sometimes, in my opinion, it's becoming a starter, because you're not a starter for your team. So, or at least starter within the league that you're playing in, because that's the next step. And then take it from there, build from there. And instead of thinking, well, the next step should be pro, you know, college pro, that's it. No, it's not like that.
I have one player, Pepe, who I would say does this religiously. And this is because I had a conversation with her this week. And she's on the youth national teams. And I'm like, okay, so what's your next start? Your next step? And she's like, oh, I want to be irreplaceable. And I'm like, what? She's like, for this team that I'm on now, she's like, I want to be the first on the team sheet. She was like, there's a lot of work for me to do, because this team is full of studs. Yeah. But that's my next thing. She's like, so the next World Cup, and no one knows when it's going to be because of COVID. And she's like, that's my next goal, is to be so good that it's not even a question if I'm in that team. And she has the work ethic. And I looked at her, I was like, oh, I wish I could have some of that in my organisation, right? Because that's the next step. She's already on the team. She's already starting. But her next step is to cement that starting. Yeah.
And sometimes that's not sexy. That's the problem, right? Because it doesn't have the bells and whistles and that you can brag about many times. It is I would say, yes, it is a grind, but it's a process. And I think that what happens a lot not only to soccer players or coaches, to human beings, is that we forget that there's a process in everything. And we just want to drink something, drink the Kool-Aid, and then say, oh, wake up and like now we have everything and we don't have to work for it.
Yeah, it's like me with Spanish. I want to take a pill.
That's true. That's true. We're still for that. Remember.
I tweeted this the other day. I was like, I wish I could just take a pill and be able to speak Spanish. And then everybody's telling me, like, you've got to go to Mexico. You've got to go to Mexico. I'm like, I know.
Yeah.
Trying.
Yeah. But you could also say,
do the work.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen, is it?
But then I would say, David, yes. But I think we discussed this in the other podcast. But what's our mind tends to do is to think in yes or no, black or white. So right now you're thinking, I need to learn Spanish. So it's I don't know. So now I need to know. But there's a whole process within that. And maybe it should be, well, it's how many words do you know? 50. Well, 100. Now learn 100 words. And instead of carrying a conversation, a very basic conversation of where's the bathroom, now you're going to ask for coffee and the phone number, and then so you're building towards that next step. And I think that that's what happens to all of us as human beings, where we think we polarize. It's either yes or no. And there's a whole gray area of learning and the process of how we're improving.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that I should set micro goals along the way.
Exactly. Yes. The next step. That's how we still have it for
words. I'm good. I know a lot of words.
Yes.
I watch a lot of Mexican TV shows.
Yes.
With subtitles. A lot. It's talking back that I can't do.
Yeah.
Yet.
But we'll get you there.
Yeah, eventually.
Cero excusas. So, and the next thing is, I know where I'm at. I know where I'm going. I'm being clear. I'm setting a goal that you hear this of the SMART goals. And I think that's important. The way I work is making sure that you're setting goals that are tangible and measurable. Most importantly, measurable.
Yeah.
But then I work, and this is something that my mentor has helped me for many years and who I learned from. In fact, kudos to him. His name is Todd Herman, which actually has a great book. It's called The Alter Ego, which helps with imposter syndrome a lot. It's fantastic. I'm hoping to have him on the podcast. But he's working on 3 goals: gold, silver, and bronze. So I'll just give a simple example. In the season, to score 10 goals. That's clear, and you have a deadline, a constraint. It's tangible, it's measurable. But then, if you set a silver goal, 7 goals, which is the gold goal is fantastic. Silver goal is very good. And the bronze is good. But the whole idea is that you recognize that there's so many different things that you don't control, and you want to make sure that you're making progress. And sometimes you'll get the bronze, sometimes silver, and sometimes gold, because there's so many other factors involved in it. And also when we're measuring goals, we're not contemplating other things that we can't see that will happen along the way. It could be an injury. It could be coronavirus right now, a pandemic, which could affect your season. There's so many different things. And I realize that many players, when they're setting goals, and sometimes they don't reach them, but they come very close, they're like, oh, I was second. That means that I'm the first loser. There's so many things that go along, and it doesn't depend on us. And that's why I think this component of having the gold, silver, bronze is essential when setting goals.
Yeah. I mean, we don't really get taught that, do we?
No.
So it is very black and white. Well, you either make it or you don't.
Yeah.
There's no, I almost did it.
Yeah. But I think this happens also with coaches. I'm not going to blame them, but we've all been with coaches where it's like, oh, it's winning. Winning is everything. And if you don't win, that's it. We don't want to be second place. Second place is the first loser or whatever. You know, I don't agree with those concepts. I don't agree.
It's ingrained with us from minute one, right? Especially in youth sports.
Yeah.
That they preach development.
Yes.
When it comes to it on game day,
yes.
What are they preaching then? Because human nature takes over.
Yes.
Right? And coaches want to win. And sometimes they allow that to overtake what they should be doing, which is develop, right?
Because
so that's
what I would say that happens is because when we start noticing that we're further from our goal, we stop executing our plan.
Yeah.
Because now we want to rush things. And by rushing things, we forget the process. And by forgetting the process, we forget that after number 1 goes number 2 and number 3 and number 4, right, left. So we want to skip the line and then we mess up. And that's why it affects us in double, I would say.
Yeah. No, I agree. I don't know why I'm such a dry throat.
Both of us have massive water bottles. Yours is branded, mine isn't. So we don't know what you're drinking. At least, and it's not clear. So, but then the third component is putting together a plan. But the plan should be, and I would be interested to hear how you work this with your players as to focusing on the things that you can control. A plan is based on that you can control.
So with me, with the players, so we have them go through that process of analysis, right? Like, where am I right now?
Yes.
Okay. And then we have them write out where do they want to be.
Yes.
So from now on, I'll be like, we'll make it more short term. Like, where do you want to be? How are you going to get there? And the focus on how you're going to get there is very, very individual. So with us, I like players to come up with drills and everything, and I help them. But then it's designing your own training and making micro goals on team training nights to try something new. So let's try something we've been working on. So whether that is, receiving the ball with the outside of your foot, see if your touch curves and goes around the player pressing you, make that goal to do that in practice. And I do that for many reasons. The most being mentally, as soon as it works once, it's usually locked in.
Yeah.
That they then know, oh, this is real, it's working. And then the psychological effect of, well, yeah, I've done 5,000 reps of this in the last month. And then it worked in practice. So when it comes to a game, they'll try it. And then eventually it becomes automatic.
Yeah.
Because they've convinced themselves that it's working. And with what I do, a lot of the pushback we get are, well, cones aren't defenders. Your footwork's trash.
Yes.
There's no positional thing here. And what people don't understand is, and no one's ever come back at me with this, as soon as I say this, everyone goes quiet, the psychological effect of everything that we do, so the analysis, the goal setting, the planning and the execution, that whole process, the psychological effect that has is self-belief. And, if you were to only do individual training, you're never going to be a footballer. But if you can spider web it all together, then anybody who discounts training on your own is a fool. And you look at like a player like Ronaldo, whose stories are there, right? Gets to training before everybody else, leaves after everybody else, working on his own. Does he need to do that? Not anymore.
Yeah.
Does he need to do that for his own mental sake? Yes.
Yeah.
He needs to know that he's training more and he's training cleaner, so the strikes are cleaner, the movement's cleaner, just for him, his own, so he can perform at his optimum level. And I've noticed this the same with all of my players. The players who consistently work with me and consistently train on their own are the ones who are the more confident, right? They start walking around with a little bit more swag, and that's not on the field, that's off the field, because they're confident in their own ability because of the reps. And we've got a thing we go reps equals gains.
Yeah.
Right, and it's true. You go to a gym, you start doing your reps. You know you're going to end up buff if everything comes together and your nutrition's good. And it's the same with football. If you get in the reps, you're going to get better, and it really helps this.
Yes.
I just basically splurged my entire process out in 5 minutes.
But sometimes we tend to believe that there's a magic potion, there's a magic pill, there's a magic formula to something. And I do think that some things can expedite, but in the end, it comes to sets and reps. It does come to working. Obviously, the plan that you're having has to be a plan that somebody knows what they're doing. But then it's just showing up and repeating and learning and repeating and learning. And then that's how you're getting better. And obviously, when people have their plan, most people don't reach their goals, not because they don't know where they're going or what they want. They don't get there because they follow to execute the plan that they were supposed to follow.
Yeah. And, you know, with that as well, I'm guilty of this. I have not written down my short-term goals for Spanish. I have not written down my long-term goals for Spanish. Why have I not done that, Pepe?
Because you have no pressure. There's no need, really.
And I've got this massive fear of failure.
But
when I write it down...
But imagine, I would say that, yes, there's a fear of failure. I agree with that. But I can assure you that there are many things in your career that you've been afraid to fail, your profession. But there comes a moment when you have to do it.
Yeah.
You don't show up like selling. Selling is nerve-wracking. But when you realize and you recognize, hey, if I don't sell, that means that I won't eat or my family won't, then you have to do it. You find a way. And I believe that your example is a fantastic example of that. But it also happens in soccer.
Oh, yeah, 100%. 100%. I always say to players, I'm only ever good under pressure.
Yeah.
This is why I want to come down to Mexico and work with a team.
Yes.
Because then I have to speak.
Yes.
Right? So if I'm saying, right, yeah, I'm going to go down in a month, I'm like, well, I've got 30 days.
Yeah.
But, and I know I'll get like a decent amount-ish to not look like a complete fool.
And you might look like a complete fool. I don't wish for that.
Well, the good thing is with me, I don't mind that.
But exactly.
As long as you're trying, people don't care, right?
And that's how you improve, because the first day will be challenging. You'll feel terribly uncomfortable. You'll feel naked. But then as it progresses, you'll find the rhythm. And I think that's what most people, and I would include myself, were afraid of feeling that sense of weirdness, inadequate, uncomfortable. And we avoid it because it burns, because it feels bad. But then we don't understand that it's a process, and then it's uncomfortable, but then you start feeling okay. But that's in the process where you grow. We should be seeking that as much as we can, and it stretches us, but we have to make sure, obviously, that it doesn't break us.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting though, right? And this is the same with players until they try it.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about anything drastic here.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not talking about doing a rainbow in a game. But we're talking about little touches, tiny little changes to their game that I'm pushing them to try, because I'm convinced that when they try it, they might fail.
Yeah.
1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. But when they get that rhythm of what we've been doing in our practice, And then they've got eyes on people playing them with a high press or whatever it is, and man marking them. I'm convinced that first time that they try it, boom, and they go around them, fantastic, and it will lock in. But they have to try it because there's no point practicing it if we're not going to.
Agreed. And I would say the final component of this, of finding clarity, of knowing if you need to improve, how to move forward, if you're stuck or if you're not stuck, and it would even apply to setting goals, is understanding and recognizing your why. And this is being used a lot nowadays, but it really is important because you will find challenging moments, uncomfortable moments when you're not growing. And if your why isn't pulling you, I would say more than pushing you, then most likely you won't continue.
Yeah. 100%.
Why do you want to learn Spanish?
Because I think it's important. Okay, so this is when I first looked at it. When I went to Vegas a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
I went with a bunch of Mexicans.
Yes.
And 8 of them didn't speak any English. 4 of them did. But I was kind of embarrassed that every time that I was spoken to, people had to change the language. And I'm like, I'm here. And when I go to Mexico, I'm like, I'm in your country. The least I can do is speak a little bit of your language. And then I kind of got obsessed with it.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a challenge. And I'm like, yeah, this would be cool. Right. Like, and the funny thing is, Pepe, when I was in high school, I learned Spanish, but we only offered French in our school.
Yeah.
And I went to the head teacher. I was like, listen, I'd really like to learn Spanish. Is there a way to do it? And I just got laughed out of his office.
Really?
He was a bit of a dick, to be honest. It was a Catholic school.
Yes.
Right? And it was like, you'll never need Spanish. I'm like, well, I'm sorry, how many countries speak French?
Yeah.
So I had to do French, but I was never into it. And I can speak a little bit. And that's like being a fish hook in the back of my head forever. You need to learn Spanish. I don't know why, Pepe.
Yeah. I can find you a strong why.
Go ahead.
Yes. So I actually think that you're making a massive disservice to the world for not learning Spanish, because all your knowledge, your know-how, and your skills and your superpowers are limited only to people that speak English. And there are lots of people that speak Spanish, teams, fantastic players, and that you're not able to help them because you're not learning Spanish. So it's a massive disservice to others.
Yeah, and that you've hit the nail on the head. Like, do you know, I get emails in Spanish.
Really?
Yeah, and I'm like, why does it? And I look at one, I'm like, man, what does he say? But now I'm like, man, I kind of know what they're saying, but can you please confirm? And it's moments like that. Like I was on Twitter yesterday, and I read something about Alexis Sanchez.
Yes. And
it was in Spanish, and I read it, and I internalized it.
Yeah.
And Pepe, I was like, I took a step back. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
I know that tweet said that Sanchez said he should never have left Arsenal.
Yes.
I didn't know all the words.
Yes.
But I put together, I'm like, oh shit. But Juan's away right now, so I'm like, looking at the dogs, I'm like, si habla español.
Yeah.
But I think you're absolutely right, because we've spoken about like doing our app in Spanish. And I don't know, I'm driven to do it.
Yes.
Driven to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that there has to be some sort of accountability always. We could discuss this in another one, but I would say that the why, that component is essential. And I would share one of mine is doing this podcast. You know, for many years, I had the idea of doing the podcast in English. I've done it in Spanish. I do a podcast in Spanish in business. I do a podcast in Spanish for soccer players. But this one in English, I was like, I'm not sure. Should I do it? You know, and a lot of the programs that I've done are in English, but the podcast is something different. And I said to myself, I don't want to die knowing that I could have shared this with my best song inside of me. And I think that it would be a terrible feeling to know that you die with potential, and that you didn't share that with the world. So that's why I think that it's important that a soccer player can identify with that and say, okay, if I really see that I have this potential and I can share it with others, share it with my teammates, share it with my team, with my city, with my country, and this is my superpower, then go for it. And if this is going to help me, my family, then it's my role to do as much as I can to make this happen. And if it doesn't happen, at least I know I did everything that I could to make it happen. And then you can smile at the end of the day and say, I did everything I could.
Oh, Pepe, it's so funny because I always tell players, like, obviously in the United States, a lot of it is about college soccer for youth athletes.
Yes.
And I always say, I'm like, when you're 18 and you graduated high school and you know where you're going to go to college, you can look in the mirror and say, I did this. I did it.
Yes.
Now, that might not be a positive thing because you may not be going to play college soccer, and that's your fault. You may not be going to the school that was your dream school since you were 7.
Yes.
It's your fault as well, you know? Or you topped out at a level that wasn't quite there, but you're going to another school. But if you're, again, like what very first thing we talked about, if you're realistic, you're not unhappy at this, right? And you look in the mirror and be like, I did this. Good or bad, you did it. Right? So in October, if I can't speak in Spanish, I did that.
Yeah.
But that's on me.
Yeah, take full responsibility.
You know, I would rather watch a Sonic the Hedgehog movie than do my Spanish that I may have done last night. May have.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not saying that I did, but it's a strong possibility that I did. But it makes me laugh, Pepe, because you're like, should I do this podcast in English? Perfect English accent. No, yeah, all right, Pepe. We're all good.
But that shows, I would say, that all of us, we have our doubts, we have our hesitations. And sometimes when we are on our own and we're in our car or our house or our room and we think and we have some sort of fear, we think it only happens to us. And we think, what's wrong with me? And I always say, look, when we're vulnerable, when we show vulnerability, it's not the same as weakness. But it also shows us that we're human beings. We're not supposed to be perfect. That's not the case. So I think that's why it's important to have a group of people that can help you. And, you know, you and I were doing this through this podcast, and hopefully whomever is listening to us can see the value and feel part of this. But having some sort of, if it's your coach, if it's an accountability buddy or somebody that you can have these types of conversations is very, very helpful. A mentor, somebody, because then you realize, there's nothing wrong with me. It's just part of being a human being.
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake anybody can make is internalizing it or not sharing, not having a mentor, not having someone who first of all you can just be honest with.
Yes.
Right. And I think everybody needs that person.
Yeah.
And again, it's being vulnerable, right? Like saying, I need some help here.
Yeah.
If that is a 15-year-old player or a 29-year-old player who's, just signed a great new contract.
Yeah.
And they still need help. And sometimes I wish that players would come out, like big players would come out and be a little bit more honest about their mentors.
Yes. Yeah.
And be like, no, this person, I'm not talking about me here. I'm talking about more like what you do.
Hmm.
But no, this person guided me when I was at a very low part, and they helped me see a bit more claro,
Yeah.
right? They helped me see a lot more clear, and you know, from then I was able to get back on track. But I have days when I'm down,
Yeah.
because I feel like what would be really helpful if professional players were more open about the mental side.
Yes.
Like, some days I'm just don't
Yes.
rate myself at the slightest. I
Yeah.
mean, whether it's a bad day at training or whether everything went wrong that morning and I had a really bad day at training and I was sat there at night and I'm like, oh, we're terrible today. And that carried on for a few days. I let it hold. I
Yeah.
let it pull me down. But then, I called Pepe and we talked through it and poof,
Yeah.
I could see the light again. Brilliant.
Yeah.
And I think we need more of that because we put these players on pedestals, right? And what we don't realise is that they are just as fucked up as the rest of us. And it's everybody's fault, right? It's because you said then, like showing vulnerability sometimes in the media and stuff looked at as showing weakness.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
it's the complete opposite. Showing that you're vulnerable is a massive strength.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I agree with you entirely. I think that the biggest challenge there is the media. It doesn't help because usually the media are not there really to show and to what's happening. They're most of them, not all of them, obviously, but to judge, to criticize. So obviously the player is very defensive. I always make fun of players when they're asking them questions, and you see the way that they answer, and obviously it's always the same. And you ask them, and they're like, "I always say the same thing because I don't want to get myself into trouble. Being very cautious." But that's one of the reasons. I think that there are very, very small opportunities, and it's growing, where you can have an honest conversation with a player. And that's why I said it's important to do this podcast, because so that players and coaches can really get to see how it is, but really to find out that the mental side of things is fascinating. It's not something that we should be afraid of. It's something that's fascinating, and that if you learn how to play that game as well, it will make a big difference on and off the field.
Yeah, yeah. If it all comes down to like self-doubt, right? And young players especially need to know that everybody has it. Now, the difference in my mind is that the players who reach the top levels, they've surrounded by themselves with people who can show them the better way to go.
Yeah.
Like, you've got self-doubt. Well, I'm not going to sit here and big you up and be like, yeah, but you've done this, you've done that. Look at you, you're amazing. It's going to be like, okay, let's chat about this. Where's it coming from?
Yeah.
Right, and you can usually get a point, and you're like, there it is. So now let's focus on what we can do to beat that. And that's always been important, because I've suffered from it. We all do. To this day, I have days where I'm just like, all I had to do today was 3 things, and I've done nothing. And then I feel terrible, and it grabs me for a few days. And then usually it's Juan or someone will be like, what's wrong with you? And I'll tell them, and I'm honest, and they're like, all right, let's go and clear your head. Yeah. Let's get you outside, let's do something, boom, boom, boom. And then I'm back on track.
Yes. Yeah.
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 We're not all supermen and superwomen.
Yes. Yeah, that's why I'm a true believer that just, what you do specifically with players is so important, because it takes them, it works differently. It's individualized, or it's small groups. And that's why I also believe in what I do, because it's the same thing. It puts you in a context where you know that it's okay to say something, because everyone's there to learn and to train something in particular. If it's the skills, if you're going to the gym, you're going to get stronger physically. If you're doing something like with the players, when I'm working with a Cero Excusas, is mentally, is putting together a plan for your career. It's the habits, all of these things that are also important and that make a big difference. So that's why I think it's very important.
Yeah. But no, we talk a lot, don't we?
This has been good. This has been really good, David. I really hope that it's helping someone out there. If it's one person, we've achieved, I would say, our goal. If it's one
100%.
person, and I would end if you have a question, send it to us. I mean, we'll make sure that we'll provide all, as much access as you can. You can send us your questions, because I want to take this podcast in that direction where it can be very interactive as well, where Johnny or Helen or whomever is writing, is sending us a video and asks us questions, and we address it from our points of view, and that way helping them in their careers as well.
Yeah, 100%. Where is this going? Spotify, iTunes?
Yeah, this is going everywhere. This is going everywhere. So Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Amazon is opening theirs as well. So we're using as many platforms. So literally, they're cero excusas for not listening to the podcast.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, we can spread it on social and help as many players as possible.
Yes, and we're actually we'll be creating small clips as well, so that we're just speaking about specific topics, so they don't have to listen to everything, which I understand you don't have always enough time. But anyways, this was great, David. Thank you once again. And I'm looking forward to the next podcast of World Cup Habits.
Let's go.
And October, remember, October is the month when David is going to learn Spanish.
At the very end of October.
Yes. No pressure.
I've been talking a little bit in Spanish. Adios, amigos.
Adios. Ciao.